Good morning. Welcome to the Secret Sauce podcast. This is where we go behind the scenes with the people who actually make payroll and HR happen across borders, time zones, and under the type of pressure that people most likely tap out from. I'm your host, Ian O'Callaghan. I'm the founder of Olympus Talent. So one of the biggest moves any payroll leader can make in their global career is to change their global payroll provider. Get it right and you transform the business brilliantly. Get it wrong and wow, you can burn through your team, time, money, and you can destroy trust on a massive scale. My guest today is someone who knows this space inside out. She's the founder of WH People, and she's helped companies transform payroll operations across the globe and built her career on a belief that payroll is as much about people as it is about process. Wendy Muirhead, welcome to the Secret Sauce.
Hello, Ian. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about today.
You're welcome. No problem at all. Before we trust anybody with a major change, we need to know what they do and how they do it. Wendy, I know you've been in the industry such a long time now. What was the deciding, that pivotal moment in your career where you decided, you know what, I'm going to set up WH People? What was that moment when you said, right, I've had enough. I'm going to do this myself. It's going to be done my way and it's going to be done right.
I think it's important, Ian, that people understand that the reason I set up WH People in the first place was because my husband said, when I announced I wanted to retire, my husband actually said, no way, over his dead body was I going to retire. He said, it'll either be death or divorce in the Muirhead household if I was to be full-time retired. True story,
Yes, yeah.
right? So to save my marriage, I went and decided that myself and a couple of my business partners, we all agreed that we were going to set up a part-time consultancy business. And the reason for that was really important. We actually were looking to set up a consultancy business where we were looking to have real balance in the work that we're doing something we loved, something that could drive real value for organizations. But it was really important that we had balance in the work that we were doing, but also having enough time with our families to really focus on the important things in life. And family is, for me, one of those things.
I love that.
So when we were thinking about for this part-time consultancy, which started off that way, Ian, it's not always like that every week, to be really honest, right? Starts off with a vision and keeping that vision, although there's a story to share. So I'm sure over the next 30 minutes or so, I'll share some of that. But the things we really recognized when we all sat around the table and said, right, we've got WH People and it's Wendy, Helen and Paul is P's, the capital P of people is Paul. So they're the three business partners. I was the founder business partner because the other two didn't join until the second quarter of our operation. And so we sat around at my kitchen table and we were in this room and we said, right, what is it that we all think that we've seen in the industry that really frustrates us and what can we do differently? And there were three sort of key things that really struck us. And I've been in the industry nearly 2 decades, Ian. I've worked with hundreds of organizations over that time. Yeah. And a couple of things that really frustrated me was a lack of misinterpretation between CEOs and their vision for their business and their strategy. Yeah. And how the misinterpretations of where payroll can impact on that growth strategy. There was misinterpretations all over the place from, political misinterpretations across different C-suite members because they've all got their own, they're all lobbying to get capital investment sometimes they're competing with each other. And some of them would take their own stance on how payroll could impact on that. Then you get the payroll operations teams, the payroll leaders, their operational teams that they're, doing an incredible job making sure everybody gets paid on time, accurately, every single time. And quite often working with really archaic or legacy systems and trying to make that all work for a business that's growing, squeezing their cost pressures all the time. And it was that interpretation that we wanted to really address so that there was real clarity between payroll operations folks, payroll leaders, C-suite and CEOs. So they're all speaking the same language. Because as much as everyone talks around, we're all in the same vision, we're all in the same team. It's amazing when you work with folks, how that misinterpretation can really start to impact. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that and I've worked in organizations that have, delivered global payroll to companies that we've worked alongside as they've went through a transformation journey. And I've seen it from many, many, many friends who are CEOs across global payroll firms across the world. And There's this request that comes through about an RFP, a request for proposal. And those vendor evaluations often come because something has happened. It could be a C-suite member's not being paid properly, or it could be that there's a major service issue in a certain country, or that there's an impact that's going to have reputational damage. But something often triggers where, okay, we're sick of what's going on. Let's have an RFP and let's go out to market. Without the incumbent provider or providers necessarily understanding what the vision is at this point. So procurement will get involved. They go through, and sometimes need help. Sometimes they go to, third parties to get help with building an RFP, to go through a sort of quite drawn out process. A lot of the time, again, there's misinterpretations around what the operational teams in different countries are doing and how it all operates. And sometimes these RFP processes, they can start off with great intent that, in 6 weeks, we're going to give you 10,000 questions. We want you to answer 10,000 questions. And then at the end of that, we'll come back to what the next steps of our process is going to be. And vendors that are out there go, okay, exciting. There's an opportunity to understand, get under the hood. But because it's being led sometimes by a procurement person or sometimes by a third party, there's no real understanding of what that question actually meant. Yep. And so people put their response to their question. And they go through this evaluation with all of this misinterpretation or misunderstanding because, the process has been mapped out in such a way that you can't really get to the truth of what's going on and what's actually the intent behind it. And then sometimes these vendor evaluations can go on for years, Ian, right? Some of them genuinely can go on for years and years and years because you need to build out a business case. You need to get like a decision in principle, whether or not you're going to have the effort to put into actually looking at the market. And sometimes from that initial, this is hard, what's gone on, from the board conversation or the C-suite management meeting that this has went wrong, it could be such a long time that it gets put on the it's too hard pile for us to do. Right?
Yeah.
Truth.
True.
Brutal truth, right? And it's drawn out far too long that, everyone's lost momentum with it. And what we've seen, like as in me and the guys at WH People, is we've seen people get really excited about, we've got a decision in principle to have a look at the market because the CEO and the board and the management team believe that we need to change what's the status quo. And then actually, what's happening is that the guys that are going through that evaluation, when they get to the final stage and they really like a provider that's going to change their world and how they can offer their services to the employees that they are caring for in their pay, it's then at that point, well, it's been put in the too hard pile, so we're not going forward. And it can really disengage the operational team. And so much so, I've seen many, many teams that when they've lost that momentum and they haven't managed to keep the stakeholders engaged, at that point, what I've found is that they actually go off and start looking for other career opportunities because of that not being heard point, like to put all that work and effort and excitement into it to then not be heard can be really soul destroying. So that was the second thing that we've seen. So we wanted to address that. And then the third thing is in technology transformation, payroll process, technology, right?
Yeah.
Is sometimes organizations don't really take accountability of transformation. It's just change, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, and businesses are always changing. Change is constant. Like if you don't change, you die. So, like that whole piece around accountability of change and how you manage that change. What I find, and I've seen it firsthand, where exec sponsors sort of push the accountability to independent contractors, right? They're struggling to meet the current budget on a change program, whether it's technology, payroll, and they're struggling to get this rolled out. And they've got to meet their requirements for the CEO that they've got the capital from, and they're tracking the budgets, and we're going over budget, and we're dipping into the contingency bucket that we had. And so they start pulling in people that maybe have done it before, but maybe you've done it in their own organizations or they've done it a couple of times. And actually, they almost put that accountability into the independent consultants that come in. Mm-hmm. Everyone pushes in the tech based on what they know to the best of their knowledge. Yeah. They all have their cupcakes. They all high five. Everyone says, we've got this tech in. Yay, let's go. And they all move to different programs, right? Yeah. And they all scatter like dust. and they move to the different programs, and the people that are left actually looking after this new technology or service provider, they don't really understand what the value is that they can get out of the technology or the service that they've got in this investment. And that's when you tend to find that that lack of accountability and that like real knowledge transfer and the connection between the organization that you've just bought, whether it's their technology or their service, and the teams that are managing it. Sometimes that disconnection can make them feel like, well, hang on, have I been missold? This isn't what I thought I was getting? And it may be that it wasn't, that it's not capable. It's just maybe a design decision that one of the independents had pushed through because they'd seen that work before.
Yeah.
So actual true understanding of accountability and making sure that the right talent and the right leaders that are going to be using this and driving this and owning it as a system, as the data architect or the sort of main point of contact for that service provider, actually really making sure that these organizations have got the right folks with the best talent to be able to support that to be successful and drive the measures of that whole business case. Those are areas where we were seeing that actually we could look to do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So we set up WH People, where the three of us decided that we were going to do, first of all, like a real review of the global payroll market so we could catalog it.
Right.
We wanted to catalog it so that we understood the different options that are out there in the market, right? Because there's so many new players and different models and different ways that, organizations could be supported to deliver their global payroll. So we did that so that we could very, very quickly identify when an organization says, my CEO is not very happy with this, or we're looking to possibly change. We can shortlist very, very quickly and get through an evaluation process between one board meeting to the next board meeting.
Well,
right. And so our aim is to try and drive that kind of market navigation and evaluation where we inject real value for clients instantly. And what we like to do is really understand what it is that they're looking to achieve, but also speak to the CEO to make sure that there's no misinterpretation between what the activities and the aims and ambitions for the team are against the CEO. So actually connecting all of the dots, making sure it's really clear and really simplified so everyone really understands it, and then being able to accelerate that kind of review of the market through the catalog that we've built, and then helping them to quickly go through a full evaluation support service that takes away that need for this misinterpreted, long, procrastinated, RFP process that sometimes just gets put, as I said earlier, on the it's too hard pile.
Sure.
So that's what we do. We want to help organizations focus on their people, their talent, and empower their talent to have the accountability to get the outcomes that drive real value in their payroll operations and their team globally.
I love that. That's brilliant. Just going on from that, you talked about obviously challenges that most companies don't even realize the pitfalls until they're already studying them. When organizations are changing their payroll service provider, obviously they come across those challenges. Where do they most often stumble? What are the most costly mistakes that you're seeing at the moment?
Well, it's a number of things because like I said about that kind of, there's a lot of uncertainties about the market. Market's moving really fast. There's new players coming out all the time. People moving from payments into global payroll, organizations that are relaunching their global payroll strategy, but they're part of big audit firms. And so there's lots and lots of movement in the market. And so there's a bit of uncertainty around actually what is out there and who can really help me. So, like that. Plus, let's face it, Ian, you and I both know you can get smooth by a great salesperson.
You can.
Right? You totally can. Like, you can have a vision of what you've got, and then you speak to somebody who's a great salesperson, and then they can take you down a path.
Yeah.
Actually, does it really come true, and can they really deliver against it? So, actually understanding the market and then having some real clarity as to what is the right fit for me right now, but also for my business as it's going to change with this long range plan. Everyone's got a short and long range plan of what they're trying to achieve in their business.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually making sure that you've got that flexibility and that support, that you're working with a provider that can really grow as you grow your business. So I think that can be quite challenging just because of the way the market is. I think some of the other things that organizations will often get into an evaluation, or they'll get their new contract, and the CEO's like, right, great, you've got this pot, go make it happen.
Yeah.
And deliver all these KPIs in your business case. And then they go, organizational data. Sometimes people don't even know where their data is. And so actually being ready for a change program, having the basics like the formats of data, especially if you're global, oh my God, if you're global, you can have different terminology on, and just, what one person can have as commission 1 in one country could be C01 in another, could be this. So actually harmonizing like all of the points so that you've got like a global data dictionary. So that you get better reporting at the back end of the process, right? So everyone's looking for fancy reports and analytical data points and presentations, dashboards. That's all the sexy stuff that you can get in an instance when you've got all your data in one place.
Yeah.
But if you haven't thought about like the basics of getting your data ready and what that organizationally looks like, that can sometimes really put people back on the back burner. And that can be so hard to get, especially if it's third-party data from other providers or different sources. That could put a real impact on all that momentum that the team had around going through, looking at different providers, and then actually getting going on delivering a project. So I think that, and then finally, I would say people do get exasperated with change, right?
Yeah.
And so actually helping organizations to understand, especially the team, what's the business case? What are you driving towards? Keeping it like a program where it's constantly reminding people of the vision of why you're doing, the benefit of why you're doing it.
Yeah.
And why that's going to impact, why it's such an important piece of work, and why it's going to impact on the business. Because if you don't think about how you measure that business case and then get the whole team on the journey, you can find you lose really good people as you're going through that type of program. And that also can put real stumbling blocks and big the barriers up. If your person in Italy had all the knowledge in their head, decided that actually, do you know what, I've got a better opportunity that I'm going to make 10 grand more in my career, going to a different competitor. Talent and the war for talent, as you well know, is real. And it's hard to keep great talent. So I would say those are the sort of main sort of stumbling blocks that I've seen that can really catch people out. And in some cases, you can do your absolute best in driving a change program. Sometimes you're never ever going to stop. The headhunters and great talent actually see an opportunity elsewhere. So it's like, how do you make sure that you've got all of that preventative risk managed? And that's unfortunately boring documentation. Like, really is boring documentation, right?
Side.
It's not the sexy side, but it's amazing how many organizations have acquired businesses and they don't even think to document like how they do the process. Like, it's amazing how many organizations don't do like a process audit just to see what we did yesterday. Is it still going to work for tomorrow? And that's the piece where I think that there's opportunities for people to get ahead of those mistakes by just being organized and having a very clear methodology of how they document their processes, and put the thought of why was that important and who signed that off. Because if people understand the why to the rationale of the actual process, it's easier for someone that's brand new to pick that up and understand that makes sense. Because people will map a process, but maybe don't put all of the sort of, well, at that point, it made more sense to do it this way because of blah.
Yeah.
And that's the bit where we try and encourage organizations to put a bit more context into the why. It's more of a heart and mind kind of thing rather than just the static process.
I love that. So obviously I just want to touch on like global payroll, because a lot of people, well, I've heard just recently, somebody said that global payroll is just local payroll on a bigger scale, but you and I both know that isn't the case. It's a whole different kettle of fish. Why is global payroll transformation so much harder than local? Is it the compliance? Is it technology, culture? What are the main fundamental differences, and why is it so much more difficult?
Ian, it's all of the above. All of what you said. It really is. I mean, like compliance, different tax years, different timings of tax years, different changes of law. you could be going through a change program, and then all of a sudden, like, there's new, process improvements and technology enhancements and how you get your social insurances in one country, and they've changed the goals. I mean, don't get me wrong, usually governments will give you some sort of warning, unless there was a stage actually probably about 10 years ago in Italy. It just seemed that there was new legislation coming out every week. So Italy was like, oh, that was a bit of a minefield, keeping on top of legislative changes. Yeah, I mean, you have to keep it legal, right? You have to be compliant. You have to be delivering the requirements if you've got people in that country. And so keeping on top of that, if you're a global business in 80 odd countries, that's really hard to do. Like, really hard, especially if you don't have people that manage the payroll and have that level of understanding in every single country.
Yeah.
And most organizations will have big pockets of populations where they've built their businesses up, and then they've expanded. It could be sales, it could be GMs, it could be as they expand into new countries.
Yeah.
And so when you've got like a salesperson that's in there as a GM that's building out in a new market, they're not necessarily going to know or think it's their place to update that this was on the news and there's new fair wage, legislation that's coming out in that country. So the compliance bit is always the thing that really worries organizations. And it is the number one fear factor for both payroll and CEOs, interestingly, because CEOs don't want to go to jail. I know when I was running a business, I didn't want to go to jail. I still don't want to go to jail.
Yeah.
It's orange is not my color, Ian. So, like that whole piece around really understanding what the requirements are and what the compliance needs are in every country and keeping on top of it, that's tough. But I think the operational resistance that can happen when you're going through a change program, I touched on the earlier question when we were talking there around, if you're a large global organization and you've got different folks in different countries that are helping to manage payroll. I've had so many of my friends, because people that I've worked with became my friends over the years, right? And they've moved to different organizations, and I hear from them all the time. We've just been told by the CEO that we're getting this new provider, and we don't, we now have to do this and implement it whilst running payroll and do it at the side of our desk for X amount, hundreds or thousands of their employees. So they're then impacted because they're running two systems at a certain stage of the process. When they start testing it before they migrate over, they have to run two systems, and they have to get the data from various sources to be able to push into the payroll system. And people sometimes don't think about what that knock-on impact for that country heads of payroll and their teams, what that can look like. And so that very often can make payroll folks think, well, this has been pushed on me. We've got a new ERP, we've got a new finance system. Because we've got this new finance system, now we're having to change the game on this. And I was really happy with my provider, my local provider. Like, I have a great relationship with them. They'll give me extra reports for free. And I had, that 10-year relationship with them. People just don't like change sometimes. And, to guide them through that and give them confidence and assurances. The challenge, I think, is that operational resistance, and giving them the confidence that you might have a 10-year relationship with the person down the road that's been looking after you all this time. But actually, the new provider has got the same capability and more, because there's always a and more aspect. And so that piece of getting the operational team comfortable around the decisions, they would prefer to be involved in it before the decision became we're going ahead, rather than it being thrust upon them. And so it's sometimes really hard to navigate that piece of it. And I would say that's one of the hardest parts of it, because data is data. You can always muddle through data and get from third party. You can use great transformation tools to be able to support you. Sometimes providers have got great transformation tools that they'll do it on your behalf. So, but that whole operational piece around having, the 10-year relationship where you've got that connection, you always got that phone call and they were on speed dial, to it's being done in a different way. And it may or may not have all the same service level qualities as what you're expecting. That's where I think globally it can be really hard. And if the change team are based in one culture and they're speaking, let's say it's a German organization and they're driving a transformation from Germany, the language barriers potentially, whilst all organizations will typically speak business language, local teams sometimes will speak a language that they're living in, they're more comfortable. And so again, that kind of misinterpretation or that disconnect can just exacerbate the operational resistance, and it can really impact on that whole change program. And that can often sometimes be to the failure of a program as well, Ian. So I mean that's what I would say. I think you're absolutely right. You kind of touch on all three of them, but there's some of the real practical aspects where I have seen it being really super challenging.
Yeah, I think that's pretty key. Every failure leaves little clues, to where the process has fallen down, and knowing them can really save you time and months of pain. So in your
Yeah.
experience, what causes global payroll transformation to really hit that failure point? If you could give one piece of advice to, senior leadership listening right now, what would that be?
Project fatigue, and actually not tracking the business case KPIs, because there's always a goal to start off with of this is why we're making this change, because this is the benefit or the savings or the cost impact.
Yeah.
We're paying this, but we're going to save Y. And, that whole taking it through and tracking the KPIs, but factoring in some time for the team just to, we've got through this chunk of it. Let's take a lessons learned. Let's take a breather. Let's celebrate what we've done. Like, it's amazing to celebrate. See, when you're tired and you think, actually, do you know what? Let's really say, well done, team.
Yeah.
You've hit the mark on that. Awesome. Let's take a break. Let's breathe. Let's crack on to the next part of it to continue to get to the vision of the goals, which is the big, saving of
Big thing, yeah.
X, and the, making sure, and big part for leaders listening, a big part is that whole goal. A lot of the time it's based on hard costs. It's not based on soft costs. But if your business is looking to grow globally, and you need to have that assurance that you're with a provider that is stable and solid and can help you to achieve your growth ambitions. That whole connection of that growth ambition and driving great talent through that journey, it's all based on trust of payroll. People disengagement of payroll can be one of those things where if somebody disengages or they've made a mistake, people don't tools until they actually work out what's went wrong, right? It really is. It's trust. It's the first promise as you get your contract or you've signed something with the organization. I'm going to pay you X for the work you do for me. And that whole piece around, really looking at, for my ability to be able to really drive the growth of the business, for me to get there, I need to have the right infrastructure and the right technology, the right people, the right processes to be able to deliver a solid case for change to drive that growth ambition. And some folks don't think about, risks of compliance. Some folks don't think about actually the inability of the existing providers when they're building the business case on that in itself is the reason that we can't deliver against, or it's going to be harder for us to be able to deliver against the goals that you're setting us. Connecting those dots and making sure that it's tracked through whilst you take it in easy, manageable change bites, giving the team a time just to get some R&R, to relax, to celebrate, to give great praise for the great work that they've done, because a lot of the time it's tough work. It's really tough work because you're having to make sure that you're still delivering payroll whilst you're making all of these new changes. There's a big impact on the team.
Thanks.
So I would say those are the things. Don't fail because of project fatigue. And I'll tell you, when project fatigue happens to its extent of burnout, people will leave, right? And people that are driving that program will go. Even leadership changes, CEOs turn, management teams churn. And when that churn happens, remind them back to the initial, this was a start and this is the end goal. And this is why we're taking it this way. So that they become the new champions of work that's maybe partway through, rather than it being swept under a carpet of, okay, now it's just status quo. Forgot about why we were doing it. It's now just status quo. And actually, we're just going to stick with what we've got. And somebody new comes in with a new mission and a new vision and a new way to drive their business. Because that can often lead to real dissatisfaction amongst the teams that have already invested so much time into it.
Brilliant. It's clear to me, you're passionate about payroll. And for someone who still loves payroll after decades in the industry, there's got to be a good reason, right? So what is it about payroll that still keeps you excited? Why are you still so passionate about the industry after all this time?
Honestly, it's my geek subject. Like, I just love it. Like, I love Particularly, I love payroll, but I particularly love global payroll because of the complexity and the additional challenges that I've seen.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what nationality you are. The payroll industry seems to just attract folks that are amazing people that are just so wedded to delivering great service to their employees. They see it as a personal thing. Like, they will not take their holidays, or they'll be on holiday.
Yeah.
I mean, I was actually on holiday recently. One of my clients was struggling with something, and I couldn't sleep because I was worried about their payroll, and I wasn't even delivering it. But it's that whole accountability and making sure that great service is delivered. And, payroll, I haven't came across a single payroll person that's just went, that's not my job. Like, genuinely, people that are in the payroll industry are the kind of folks that will take that, will work all night, will work all weekend. We will not give up unless we've got every opportunity to make that happen for organizations. But I think the other reason that I love it so much, and I think that this is an issue in the industry, and I think that, organizations need, and particularly CEOs need to understand this in so much more. And I think there's an opportunity for the industry to really help in this, to help payroll leaders take that passion that they've got and the care that they've got and actually drive it as a strategic element towards a business's strength. Because businesses, other than manufacturing, people is the biggest cost in any business, right?
Absolutely.
As I say, other than the manufacturing vertical. And then people costs are usually, salary bills usually number two. And organizations, CEOs typically still see that, payroll is a SG&A expense, right? They don't see it as something that really matters to the organization's success. Well, I'll tell you, if 70% of my workforce, when I was running larger businesses, because there's only 3 of us now, right? So I can't say that now. And I do the payroll for WH people. And every payday, I usually send them a message to go, from your friendly payroll team, I hope everyone's been paid correctly. Do reach out and they love that they get a wee message from me every payday. But when I was running teams, I would be, if 70% of my organization just walked out the door, I couldn't deliver what I needed to deliver. And most organizations would be absolutely up the Swanee, Ian.
Absolutely.
And that's where, actually engagement of people and how they go to work is because they want to get paid. It might be a tough job, but they want to go so that they can get paid. And I think that connection point around great talent, retaining great talent, growing great talent, and that connection point of where payroll really matters, it's really undervalued. And I don't think that people see the opportunity. CEOs don't connect enough with the amount of effort that's going in. And I think that payroll leaders should have an opportunity, maybe not at every board meeting, but should have an opportunity to build a relationship with the CEO and the lead and the management team on really helping them understand the strategic importance of the work that they do and where they need support and where they would appreciate having a voice when big decisions are being made.
Yeah.
That's something that I think would be something really beneficial for anyone that's CEO and thinking about, how they are building their business and growing their business. But yeah, it's genuinely the people that I came across. Some of them have become like my kids' godparents, and it's just an industry where, you kind of retain that love for it because the people are just so great. And as I say, it doesn't matter if you're in New Zealand to Hawaii, payroll folks are all wanting to do a great job for the organizations they work for. And I love that.
Brilliant. Well, we've got to my favorite part of the show. This is it, man. This is the bit that I really love this bit. So this is the quick fire Q&A round, and these are just like a couple of quick things that I've just thought about as we've been going. So what's one? Yeah, we'll get straight into it. One red flag that a payroll provider isn't fit for purpose?
Clarity of support model with a detailed SOW and service credits.
Wow. Okay. What's the most underrated skill for a global payroll leader?
Selling themselves as a strategic leader at the C-suite.
Okay. What's on your desk right now that's causing you problems?
I don't have anything but a drink on my desk. I'm paperless. So I do everything paperless so that I don't, especially being a baby business. And so, yeah, I've got literally, it's not alcoholic, I promise.
God bless you.
It's just an apple and blackcurrant
I love
juice
that.
and my phone.
I love that. And your phone. Okay. What's one piece of advice that you wish somebody had told you at the beginning of your career?
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Right. So before we wrap up, we've got one tradition that, well, I say it's a tradition, it's a new thing that we're doing, but it's time for you to crown your payroll Olympian, someone that you believe is raising the bar and leading by example, inspiring global payroll professionals, you know, wherever they may be. Wendy, who's your nomination for your global payroll Olympian?
Well, I didn't mention at the top of the call, but we this year, as we went into year 2, have extended WH People with WH People Network.
Huh?
And someone that's within the WH People Network that I'm super proud to have him as part of the WH People Network is someone that I'm sure folks listening will know. He was one of my customers about 15, 16 years ago, and we stayed really good friends all the way through his career journey. And he's just wrote an amazing book around global payroll. So my nomination would be for one of the WH People Network, Max van der Klis-Visson.
I love Max. So literally, we're working on bringing Max straight to the show.
Let me help you with that.
Yeah, I've literally, we had something scheduled, but we need to bring him back in. So I think the schedule's sort of mismatched with like annual leave and things. So literally, he'll be on the show very, very soon. Trust me.
Awesome.
Wendy,
awesome.
This has been an absolute masterclass. And, you know, you've shown that changing payroll provider isn't just tech decision, it's a leadership decision. And for anyone listening, WH People focused on 3 big global things: global payroll and workforce management, strategy, market navigation and evaluation, technology performance coaching, and performance process coaching. We'll put Wendy's details in the show notes for you so you can get in touch with Wendy if you've got any questions or queries or you'd like to engage with WH People. Until the next time, this has been The Secret Sauce. Keep raising the bar and building what matters. And remember, payroll isn't just about running numbers, it's about running the business.